Most people think that smart people are quiet because they are shy, insecure, or have nothing to say. But psychology says something completely different. In reality, smart people stay quiet because their brain works differently. They don't speak to fill silence. They don't talk to impress. They don't react emotionally just to feel heard. And this is where the first shocking truth comes in. Intelligent minds process information faster than they express it. Before they speak, they analyze. Is this useful? Is this necessary? Will this change anything? If the answer is no, they stay silent. Now, here's the psychology that most people never talk about. Smart people understand something very early in life. Talking more does not mean being powerful. Thinking deeper does. Their brain is constantly observing patterns, human behavior, tone changes, emotional triggers, hidden intentions. While others are busy proving their point, smart people are busy understanding the entire situation. And psychology proves this with a concept called cognitive load theory. The human brain has limited mental energy. Smart people protect that energy. They don't waste it on arguments that go nowhere. They don't waste it on conversations that add no value. They don't waste it explaining themselves to people who won't understand anyway. That's why their silence is not emptiness, it's processing power. Here's something uncomfortable but true. People who talk too much often think out loud. Smart people think before they speak, and because of that, when they finally speak, people listen. Their words carry weight. Their silence creates curiosity. Their presence feels powerful. This is why psychology says silence is not the absence of intelligence, it is often the proof of it. And this is just the beginning, because in the next part, you'll understand how silence becomes a psychological advantage and why smart people let others underestimate them on purpose.
Silence is not weakness. Psychology proves silence is control. Smart people understand one deep rule of human behavior. The person who reacts less controls more. Most people speak because they feel uncomfortable with silence. Silence makes them anxious. It exposes their thoughts. It makes them feel powerless. But smart people are comfortable being quiet because their confidence doesn't need noise. Here's the psychology behind it. When you stay silent, the human brain of the other person starts working overtime. They begin to overthink, explain more than needed, reveal emotions, expose intentions. This is called projection bias in psychology. People project their own thoughts onto your silence. That's why in conversations, arguments, or negotiations, the quiet person often has the upper hand. Smart people use silence as an observer's advantage. While others talk, they collect data. Who is emotional? Who is insecure? Who wants validation? Who is trying to dominate? They don't interrupt. They don't correct immediately. They let people show their real self. And here's something powerful. Smart people know that once words leave your mouth, you lose control over them. But silence keeps control in your hands. This is why intelligent people often let others underestimate them, because psychology says people reveal their true strategy only when they think you're harmless. Silence makes you appear harmless, and that's the trap. Because when the time comes, smart people speak with clarity, precision, and impact. No extra words, no emotional noise, just truth. And when that happens, people suddenly realize they misjudged the quiet one. In the next part, you'll discover why smart people avoid unnecessary arguments and how arguments actually reduce intelligence psychologically.
Most people think arguments are about truth. Psychology says arguments are about ego. Smart people understand this early. They know that in most arguments, no one is actually listening. Everyone is just waiting for their turn to speak. So they choose silence. Here's the psychology behind it. When emotions rise, the rational part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, shuts down. At that moment, logic loses, ego wins. Smart people don't argue because they know you cannot win a logical battle against an emotional mind. That's why they step back, not because they are wrong, but because they are mentally ahead. Another psychological reason is energy economics. Every argument costs mental energy, emotional balance, and time. Smart people ask one simple internal question before engaging. Is this worth my mental peace? If the answer is no, they disengage. And here's something most people don't realize. Winning an argument rarely changes a person, but it almost always damages relationships. Smart people care more about long-term outcomes than short-term victories. They understand something deeper. Silence frustrates ego more than words ever could. When you don't react, the other person feels ignored, not defeated, and ego hates being ignored. So instead of shouting, proving, or defending, smart people let silence do the work. They observe, they remember, they move accordingly. And here's a powerful psychological truth. People who constantly argue are trying to prove intelligence. People who are truly intelligent don't need to. They let their actions speak. They let time reveal the truth. That's why smart people walk away from debates that lead nowhere, because they know not every fight deserves your mind. In the next part, you'll understand why smart people speak less but leave a stronger impact, and how this creates authority without effort.
Most people believe authority comes from speaking more. Psychology proves the opposite. Authority comes from scarcity. Smart people speak less because they understand one deep human bias, the scarcity effect. When something's rare, the human brain automatically assigns it higher value. That's exactly what silence does. When a smart person finally speaks, people listen, not because of volume, but because of expectation. Here's the psychology. If someone talks all the time, their words blend into noise, nothing stands out. But when someone stays quiet most of the time, every word feels intentional. Smart people don't think in sentences, they think in conclusions. They wait until thoughts are complete. They speak only when clarity is formed, and this creates perceived intelligence. Another powerful concept is status signaling. High-status individuals don't rush to explain themselves. They don't seek approval. They don't compete for attention. Smart people mirror this behavior naturally. They don't interrupt. They don't oversell. They don't justify unnecessarily. Because psychology says people who explain too much often feel uncertain about their position. Silence signals confidence. And here's something subtle but important. Smart people understand timing. They don't speak first, they don't speak last. They speak at the moment when their words can shift the room. That's why one sentence from a quiet person can carry more power than 10 minutes of loud talking. People may not remember everything that was said, but they remember who changed the direction. In the next part, you'll discover how silence helps smart people read others deeply and why they rarely get manipulated. Most people get manipulated because they talk too much. They reveal emotions, fears, desires without realizing it. Smart people do the opposite. They stay quiet, and psychology explains why this works. When you speak less, you give others less material to use against you. No emotional leaks, no unnecessary opinions, no exposed insecurities. This creates information asymmetry, a situation where one person knows more than the other. Smart people listen more than they speak, which means they collect information while giving away almost nothing. And information is power. Here's another psychological truth. Manipulators rely on reactions. They push emotional buttons and wait for a response. Silence breaks this pattern. When a smart person doesn't react, the manipulator gets confused. Their strategy collapses. They expose themselves. This is called emotional neutrality. Smart people stay neutral, not because they don't feel, but because they control what they reveal. Silence also sharpens perception. When you're not busy talking, you notice micro-expressions, tone shifts, contradictions, nervous laughter. These small signals tell the real story. That's why smart people often say, "I trust patterns, not words." And here's something powerful. Most people think manipulation is loud. In reality, it's subtle.
Smart people stay quiet long enough to see the full pattern before responding, and when they finally act, it's precise. No emotional explosion, no drama, just a clear decision. That's why they're difficult to deceive. In the next part, you'll understand why smart people feel no need to prove themselves and how this silence protects their self-respect.
Most people speak to be validated, to be seen, to be accepted. Smart people don't. Psychology explains this with internal validation. Smart people measure their worth internally, not by applause, likes, or approval. That's why they don't rush to explain themselves. They don't defend every accusation. They don't correct every misunderstanding, because they know something important. People who truly understand you don't need explanations, and people who don't never will. Silence protects dignity. Here's another psychological layer. When you constantly try to prove yourself, you hand power to others. You let them decide your value. Smart people refuse that. They understand that self-respect is quiet, not loud. And here's a truth that stings. Most arguments, flexing, and over-talking come from insecurity, not intelligence. Smart people are secure enough to let others be wrong about them. They don't chase perception, they focus on reality. And psychology supports this. The more you seek validation, the more dependent you become. The less you seek it, the more independent and grounded you feel. That's why smart people choose silence over self-justification. They know their work will speak, their consistency will reveal truth, time will correct misunderstandings. And while others exhaust themselves trying to look smart, smart people conserve energy being smart. In the next part, you'll discover why silence helps smart people stay emotionally strong even in stressful situations.
Most people fear being alone. Silence makes them uncomfortable. Smart people seek it. Psychology explains this through deep cognitive processing. Intelligent minds need uninterrupted time to connect ideas, analyze experiences, and form insights. Noise breaks thinking. Constant conversation fragments attention. Silence restores focus. That's why smart people often prefer solitude, not because they hate people, but because they value clarity. Here's the psychology. When the brain is quiet, it enters the default mode network, a state where creativity, memory, and problem-solving activate. This is where breakthroughs happen. Smart people protect this mental space. They limit small talk. They avoid unnecessary social noise. They choose meaningful conversations over constant ones. And here's something misunderstood. Solitude is not loneliness. Loneliness feels empty. Solitude feels full. Smart people use silence to reflect, learn from mistakes, prepare mentally, strengthen identity. They don't need constant external stimulation because their inner world is active. That's why silence often makes them sharper, calmer, and more insightful. And when they return to the world, they return prepared. In the next part, you'll discover why smart people observe more and judge less, and how silence improves social intelligence. Most people listen to reply. Smart people listen to understand, and silence is the reason why. Psychology shows that when you speak less, your brain becomes more attentive to subtle social cues. Smart people notice things others miss: body language, eye movement, inconsistencies, emotional shifts. They observe before they judge. Here's the psychology. Judgment requires incomplete information. Observation gathers complete data. Smart people stay quiet long enough to see the full picture. They don't rush to label people. They let patterns reveal character. Silence also reduces bias. When you're not talking, you're not projecting your beliefs onto others. You're learning. That's why smart people often understand people deeply without asking many questions. They read energy. They sense discomfort. They notice contradictions between words and actions. And here's a powerful truth. Social intelligence isn't about being loud or charismatic.
It's about awareness. Silence creates awareness. Smart people use this awareness to respond wisely, not impulsively. That's why they rarely embarrass themselves socially. They rarely regret interactions. They move with emotional accuracy. In the final part, you'll see the ultimate reason smart people stay quiet and why silence is the highest form of intelligence.
At the highest level, smart people stay quiet for one reason. They have mastered themselves. Psychology calls this self-control and awareness. Smart people don't let the world pull reactions out of them. They choose when to speak. They choose when to stay silent. And that choice is power. They understand something most people never realize. Not every thought needs a voice. Not every emotion needs expression. Not every situation needs a response. Silence becomes a filter. Only what truly matters passes through. This is why smart people appear calm in chaos, grounded in pressure, and clear in confusion. Their quiet is not accidental, it's intentional. And here's the final psychological truth. The loudest minds seek attention. The smartest minds seek understanding. That's why silence feels heavy. That's why it commands respect. That's why it unsettles insecure people. Because silence reflects inner order. And when a smart person finally speaks, it's not to dominate, it's to deliver clarity. No noise, no ego, just truth. So if you've ever been told you're too quiet, remember this. Silence is not your weakness, it's your intelligence waiting for the right moment. And that's why smart people stay quiet.